Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Encore presentation of the International Student Journey, More Than Just Heads on Beds, which was one of the highest rated sessions by the 900 plus attendees at the 2017 NAA Student Housing Conference in Chicago last month. This session was one of 16 breakout sessions focused on operations in the off-campus student housing market. We have an amazing lineup of speakers today who will share some of their insight into the world of attracting, integrating, and retaining international students into their student housing community. If you weren't lucky enough to have attended the conference or you missed some of the sessions, you still have a chance to dive into some really great content that was shared there. NAA's sister organization, the National Apartment Association Education Institute, is proud to present Rewind. It's a collection of 16 PowerPoint synced audio and video recorded sessions from the 2017 NAA Student Housing Conference. Purchasing this powerful online tool allows you to have ongoing access to some of the very best education and training in the industry that's focused on off-campus housing. When you buy the tool, you can share the content with your colleagues via training sessions or brown bag lunches, and you can also you can earn up to 6 continuing education credits towards NAAEI designation renewal. The purchase price is $149 for the 16 session set, and it's a great investment in your professional development. And last but not least, please mark your calendars for the 2018 NAA Student Housing Conference and Exposition, slated for February 13th and 14th in 2018 in beautiful Orlando, Florida. We are looking forward to moving the event to a warm winter destination in a resort setting. Okay, all done with my commercials. Now we can turn our insights toward today's presentation. I'd like to introduce some really awesome panels from our panel of industry experts. Sabrina Hunt is the property manager for Peak Campus. She brings over 10 years of experience in student housing. She began her student housing career in West Lafayette, Indiana. She oversaw a new development in Bloomington, Indiana, and managed a large project in College Park, Maryland. She's the on-site person who is responsible for... hang on, folks, just a second.
Hasn't started it yet.
How do I do that?
See the orange button at the top?
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. I had a little technical difficulty, but I'll back up and we'll start at the beginning. Thank you for your patience as you hold to dial in today. My name is Clark Everett. I'm the Director of Conference Education at the National Apartment Association. I'm your host for today. Welcome to the Encore presentation of International Student Journey, More Than Just Heads on Beds, which was one of the highest rated sessions by the 900 plus attendees at the 2017 NAA Student Housing Conference in Chicago last month. This session was one of 16 breakout sessions focused on operations in the off-campus student housing market. We have an amazing lineup of speakers today who are going to share some of their insight into the world of attracting, integrating, and retaining international students into your student housing community. If you weren't lucky enough to attend the conference or miss some of the sessions, you still have a chance to dive into the great content that was shared there. NAA's sister organization, the National Apartment Association Education Institute, is proud to present Rewind. It's a collection of 16 PowerPoint synced audio and video recorded sessions from the 2017 conference. Purchasing this powerful tool online allows you to have ongoing access to some of the very best education and training that's focused on student housing and the whole industry. You can share that content with your colleagues via brown bag lunches. You can also earn up to 6 continuing education credits towards your NAAEI designation renewal. And last but not least, mark your calendars for the 2018 NAA Student Housing Conference and Exposition, slated for February 13th and 14th in 2018. We're moving to Atlanta, Florida, and looking forward to moving the event to a warm winter destination in a resort setting. Okay, all done with my commercials. Now we can turn our sights towards today's presentation. I would like to introduce to you some awesome panelists who are great industry experts. Sabrina Hunt, property manager for Peak Campus, brings over 10 years of experience in student housing. She began her student housing career in West Lafayette, Indiana. She oversaw a new development in Bloomington, Indiana, and managed a large project in College Park, Maryland. Sabrina really adds to the panel today as somebody who works directly on site and is the face-to-face integrator working with international students at her property. Our next panelist is Katie Tang. She is a Master of Accounting Science student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She is originally from Guangzhou, China, and she completed her undergraduate degree in accounting at the U of I, and she's been in the U.S. as an international student for 5 years. She brings a really interesting perspective to the panel because she is our target audience, and she's going to help us understand what it's like from the student's point of view. Joshua Melching is the International Student Relations Specialist at Asset Campus Housing. He was a panelist at the conference presentation back in Chicago, but wasn't able to join us today, although I wanted to give him a shout out because he really contributed to developing some of the content that will be shared. And last but not least is Ryan Hand. He's the Vice President of Business Development at Peak Campus. Prior to Peak Campus, Ryan was at student.com, the leading global marketplace that helps international students find student housing when abroad. His former experience includes Director of Sales and Marketing for Aspen Heights, where he managed the strategic direction of a 14-property portfolio consisting of over 12,000 beds. I love Ryan's perspective for this panel because he is focused on business development and figuring out ways to meaningfully engage the target audience of international students for your property. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Ryan. Ryan, I'm going to make myself go away in the videos so that I'm not distracting. And then I will turn the controls over to you. There you go.
Sounds great. Perfect. Well, first and foremost, thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate it. We had a blast doing this panel at NAA, and I think we had a really great response. A lot of good engagement, great questions that came out of it. I'm probably the least interesting one here. Katie and Sabrina's knowledge that they brought to the panel was excellent. So we're going to replicate that today and talk about a number of things in the international student housing world that I think will be really helpful for you guys. So, Clark can, let's see, I think I have control now. Perfect. So before we start this session, when we were actually coming up with this session, I wanted to outline a couple things. First, what this session is not. I've attended a lot of sessions throughout my career in student housing, and sometimes they end up being repetitive. Our goal here was for it to not be a super repetitive session that you might have heard before, and in that, we thought a lot of times they're like, someone wants this magic bullet of what they can do to help international students sign leases at the properties, and we're here to say there's not just one thing you can do. This session is out there to help you guys understand a little bit more about the mentality of the student coming over and some of the operational best practices that we think you guys can implement in order to have a property that's really desirable for students, international students specifically. It's also not a sales pitch of any sort. While I was involved in an organization that was focused on finding international students to find student housing, it's truly, we're just trying to share some knowledge that we've learned throughout our journey and give that knowledge to you all. And then finally, it's not a pre-planned panel. We're all going to be humans here talking, and we would love any interaction. If you do have a question or you would like to make a comment or a note, please send that through in the chat bar, just like you would in any other GoToMeeting webinar. Just send it through on the chat. We'll be checking those, and I'll definitely get to them at the end if I can't answer them in line. Again, this is going to be what you guys make it. So if there's something we hit on or don't hit on that you'd like to hear about, please, please, please feel free to voice any opinions, voice any questions that you might have. What this session is, as Clark kind of already introduced us, it's industry leaders giving our real experience and recommendations when it comes to the international audience. And really what's super important here with Sabrina and Katie, Katie has lived that international student journey, so you should be able to learn some things from her, and Sabrina operates properties with many international students, so she's another great wealth of knowledge for us. We also wanted to give you guys some tangible takeaways to help you succeed on the ground when it comes to attracting these international students in your market. All right, so I think one of the things that I always try to help people with when we start talking about international students is how big of a journey it is, and ultimately their mentality when they're thinking, okay, I'm going to go to school abroad, I'm not going to study in China or wherever, I'm going to study in the United States. So Katie, can you kind of give everybody some background on that international student journey, why they're coming to the U.S., and some things that they have to do in order to be prepared to study abroad?
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Ryan. That's a really excellent question here. So as we may already notice here, everybody, that the number of international students is increasing every year, and it is not stopping. And it's a huge market with unlimited potentials, and understanding the students is the first step of getting the target. So naturally, I guess your question will be, why do students come here? So most students come here for colleges or high schools for education, and it's pretty straightforward. U.S. is known for its higher education opportunities. 13 of the top 20 universities in the world are in the U.S., and it's just a different experience compared to their home country. So a lot of people want to experience what it's like to live a different college life or have a different education experience. There's multiple reasons why people are coming down to here, but it's definitely a big trend. I can't say for other countries, but in China, the number is increasing every year. And if we can, yes. And by choosing colleges or universities, there's a couple of things we're looking at for each student. I would say the college or university ranking is everybody's first concern when it comes to choosing one offer to accept or not. But other things doesn't matter, like location, reputation, and the living cost, which is associated with location. So this is related to our topic today. So a lot of times students are coming down to for example, my school in Champaign-Urbana area, it is a pretty small city. So a lot of people are expecting really high prices for the rent or for apartments, but it is comparatively not so much. It's like the most expensive one we have is about $1,500 you can get. So that's just something to basically let them know before they come in, so they know what they're expecting. I think that's definitely something as the properties we can do. And also while
I was just saying, I think that's great, and that's really important. You know, obviously, the higher education system being so, you know, a great higher education system in the U.S. Can you tell us a little bit about, just while we're thinking about what the higher education system is like in China versus the U.S.? Is it more competitive, or is it harder to get into, more expensive?
It's actually not that much hard to get into. It's just a completely different experience. So for universities in China, it's more like, I guess, class in high school, you have homework every day, you don't have anything, but just basically it's a completely different experience compared to the U.S. university, and it's a completely different system. And for and after graduation, if they have a they have graduated from U.S. college. It is more competitive in China or anywhere to get a job. So that's probably one of those most important reasons why they come here. And as the number is increasing every year, and it gets more competitive for them because a lot of people have a degree in the U.S. or master's degree in the U.S. So it's not as special anymore. So more people want to do it. It's more like a, I don't know, it's a cycle.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that one of the things that I learned in my experience was when you're in student housing and you're just thinking about how do I get into that market, how do I learn about where the international students are, it helps to take yourself out of that mentality and put yourself into the mentality of I wonder what it's like for someone to leave their home country and come over here, and I wonder how many things they're thinking about other than just where am I going to live. So Katie, could you tell us a little bit more? I know we've got this list here on this slide, but a little bit more about all the preparation that goes into, finding a school and then ultimately applying, getting in, and again, all these different things you have to take care of once you've decided to make that journey.
Definitely. So after accepting an offer and making that decision, which is the first step we mentioned, that we need to, like, as a student, we need to think about where we're going to go, how we're going to go there. So the first thing comes first is a visa. So visa application and I-20, which is part of the visa process, is the first step. If we can get that, we can come into the U.S. So that always takes up to, I would say, 1 to 3 months. It would take a long time and a lot of different legal processes to do that. So if we can provide different information for that, but I know a lot of colleges and universities do that, so that's part of the resources they have, but they would definitely appreciate that if someone reach out to them for any of those information beforehand. And also travel arrangement, like how they get to the university, how to get to their housing or anywhere. Again, like my school is 2.5 hours from the airport in Chicago, which is like the only airport has a flight to my home country, home city. So that will become an issue. Like after you get off the flight, how do you get to the school? You don't have a car, and a lot of people, especially in China, a lot of people, most high school students don't drive, so there's no choice of like renting a car. So most of the choices are taking a bus, but where do you get a ticket? What kind of bus do you need? It's just all kind of information that we need to know. And a lot of them don't think about it until they come here, so it'll be really overwhelming. And also, like the list says here, they need new phone numbers, like US phone numbers to use so they can contact someone. Again, that goes back to how to get to the school. When you come to the US, you don't have a phone number, so you can't call anybody. So you can imagine how helpless that would be. But a lot of people, I know a lot of charities are now doing cooperations with U.S. phone carriers like AT&T, T-Mobile's, and U.S. bank accounts, and that has been proven really helpful for students because that's the first 2 things they will need to do after they got to the school. And if they can do that just before moving in or during the process of moving in, if I were that person, I would definitely appreciate that because it took me a long time to figure out how to get a phone number, how to get my bank account set up, how to pay the tuition. It's just a very different experience. Especially,
That's a great point. Sabrina, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but what do you guys do to that point to kind of help these students out right when they kind of, in so many words, land on their feet, at your doorstep?
Right. I mean, obviously, communication is the biggest thing. Be proactive because they are making those travel arrangements, and it helps when you're working with booking agents or things like that through organizations, but at the same time, through email or however they're doing their lease documents, getting those copies of visas and I-20s early, making sure they know when you're open, the time change, when their flight comes in, and those, just communicating the bus options and transportation. It's something a little bit easier for us to help them figure out how to get from where they're flying into to the location that we're at when they can arrive, or does that mean, we need to have some extra staff here to do some late night move-ins if they're going to be coming a little bit later. As well as we can get into it a little bit in one of the other slides, but at Move-In, just having some vendors there that, you know, working with AT&T or, you know, some of the mobile companies to help them have those resources at the property. You know, I always do a vendor fair, and we really look at, you know, renter's insurance, different, we had an eye doctor at one, which, you know, those types of things with health, and kind of overwhelming where those resources are there at Move-In for them to, you know, get those phone numbers, get things set up in that aspect.
So yeah, that's great. Great. Katie, is there anything else, I guess, on this before they get into the States that you want to touch on?
It's not any big issues. It's just a lot of, I guess, just put yourself into their field so you can see, just imagine yourself going somewhere you don't know anything about, and you'll see there's a lot of problems coming out. If you can facilitate that before they know they need it, that would definitely change the game.
Perfect. So this is a question that I used to get all the time, and it was like, Ryan, you know, when are we going to see these international students in these markets? And I remember being in those shoes when I was at Aspen Heights, and you know, saying, all right, you know, we've got a couple of groups left. One of those groups are the international students. So Katie, again, I think you'd be the best one to answer this. You know,
Sure.
what time frame are international students kind of looking for housing?
Sure. So a lot of people are naturally thinking the first thing the students will look for is housing, because when you go to a place, you will find a place to live. But unfortunately, that's not the case for us. A lot of students actually leave that options by the last. That's the last thing they worry before they go over to their university or even get on the plane. So it's generally later on during the process. So I know a lot of properties are probably pretty freaking out in May, June, July if they are not filled. But a lot of international students are actually coming in during that time. So that's a very good opportunity to grab. And I know a lot, I know some of our properties on my campus are actually doing some Chinese traditional festivals during that time. There's one in June. So some students, I know there's one program with over 200 students coming in during June, so they just have that festival to invite them all, basically incorporate with the property to have a tour. They have like 50 leases just in one day. So that's
Wow.
something to think about, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, yeah, that's key. And like you said, I mean, again, in my experience, we would get most international students asking about housing in May, June, July, August, and sometimes, you know, because of the distance between where they might be and where they're coming, the communication barrier is a little bit harder too. So sometimes it would even take, you know, 15 to 20 days from the start of the, you know, I want to live here to the actual sign lease, paid deposit, and things like that. So I guess the message to everybody out there is don't fret, they're coming, but like Katie said, it might not be, you know, September 1st that they're going to look, or really the actually September, but right when you kick off leasing is probably not going to be the hottest time for these students. It's going to be once they've been accepted to the school and done that list of things that we just talked about, then they'll start thinking about housing and whatnot in the certain markets. You know, I think that's a key thing that a lot of people know, but truly it's really helpful to at the end of the year to have, you know, kind of those students that'll help, you know, fill some of our vacancies.
Sure. And just a bit footnote for follow up by Ryan, just to let you guys know how the time arrangement is. So normally the student will get an offer from university starting in in January and until March or April. So until that time, they won't know where they're going. They will basically apply for like 20 schools or even more and try to see which one is the best choice they are going to. So it's basically later on until March or April in general that they will actually know which city or which place they're going. So it's definitely not as early as we hope it is. And
Yeah.
also, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just, I mean, I totally agree. I think that I just switched the slide here, and I think on this point, the map on my left side is showing you a little bit of the concentration of where students are coming from. Obviously China is the largest by far, but there are a number of other areas where students are coming, and the number continues to increase at about 7%, 7 to 8% year over year of students coming into the U.S. as international students studying at these universities. So, it's definitely, some big numbers we're dealing with here, and a lot of, I'm sure we'd all love 300,000 leases coming in. And then, Katie, why don't you tell us about this survey you did on campus?
Sure. So this survey is that I basically talked to and asked a lot of my friends and friends, all our international students, to ask them what is the most important thing when looking for housings. And the responses we get, almost 100 responses, show that obviously there are price and locations, things that we can't necessarily change, but you can obviously see word of mouth is a very important part when they're looking for housings, especially in the universities where they are required to live in dorms in the freshman year. They would, at the beginning of their sophomore year, they would know some properties names by their friends or mention, or someone living there that have been there to have parties or anything. So that's definitely a big part of any properties that have a good reputation. And a lot of other resources we can think about is like university orientations. University usually have a special orientation in the U.S. or back in their home country before they come in for international students, just to let them know what the process is, because it will be a little bit different. And it is a very good chance to cooperate with the university or college, because that will be the first impression they have about any properties. And they'll basically, when they start looking for housings, they will remember your name and probably go there first.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sabrina, does that ring true to you? Are these some things that you guys are seeing, and do you think that it'd be helpful to attend some of these things?
Yes, definitely. I think attending those are very important. Word of mouth is really big with the international community, so that's something that you really do want to focus on with your current residents to bring in those new residents.
Awesome. Well, cool. So, like we were just saying, the industry itself of international students, it's growing, and if you look at this chart, you're going to see a 36.5% increase in 5 years, 4 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, nope, 5, 5 years, which is huge. We're continuing to see that uptick happen year over year, 7 to 8%. You've got some countries like India that's increasing around 30% year over year. But I think everything that we've said so far, I mean, the United States has these really, really great higher education universities that are just attracting all kinds of international students, and like Katie said, it's just a different experience, and I think it's an experience that culturally they want to take a part in. And again, we kind of reap the benefit of being able to help these students, house them, and be a big part of their life when they're coming over to study, which is awesome. We did a study when I was at student.com on the economics of kind of the international student journey, and it was I think $36 billion that international students were contributing to the U.S. economy. I mean, which is huge. That's actually how much they're paying me today to do this panel. So, I mean, just that alone, thank goodness we have those international students. No, kidding, obviously, but truly, it's a huge number. And the biggest portion of that is housing. There's other fields, obviously, like healthcare and things that come into play, but again, housing is such a big part of that. Sorry, let me advance the slide here real quick. Click. There we go. So this map represents kind of a heat map, if you will, for where international students are living when they come over. And obviously we've got some hot spots, some markets that we probably already knew about. Your New York City, your California, LA, there's a large concentration. So a lot of these bigger cities, they're going to find a lot of international students, and that's not shocking. Typically the culture there supports it pretty well. It's a high-density place. You don't necessarily need a vehicle in all these locations. But they're really, we've placed students in all kinds of markets all over the place. So I guarantee there is an international student population at your university right now. They're truly exploring all over the place, and there are a lot of universities that are working with either overseas agencies or they're going overseas and trying to establish themselves with the international student market. So we'll continue to see these grow, but I just thought this was a good insight into the industry so you can kind of see where some of the highest populated areas for international students were. And again, Katie or Sabrina, I don't know if you have anything to add to this, but I mean, truly, it's something that we'll see grow. But I think you all would agree that those markets are obviously staying high. And Sabrina, I know you're in Chicago and manage a property there, so I'm sure you've seen an increase year over year as well.
We have, and that's one thing the universities here in Chicago, you are seeing their international populations grow and other organizations coming in. So I think it's very important to just stay in contact, through those organizations at the university level, and then, the ones that we work with already, and just keeping those relationships going too.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I already moved the slide up here, but Sabrina, back to you. I'll just kind of pose the question. We talked about it a little bit, but help us, understand some things you guys are doing to prepare for these international students, when it comes to move-in and then moving on to the resident experience.
Right. So move-in day is definitely a very busy day all around. With the international students coming in, you do have to take additional time, communicating all of the policies, procedures, things that, if it's their first time here in the United States, that it might take a little bit longer in the process. So again, communication is the key. Being proactive, making sure that the simple things that can be done ahead of time are that you have those visas, you have those I-20 copies, you have that going, and that you have the services there on move-in day to help them out, especially when it comes to if they have to do a payment like a deposit or something like that, making sure that there's a way that they can pay internationally, like with international credit cards, which can be, not every management company can take that. So, they're immediately going to be looking to set up local bank accounts. I've had multiple properties where on move-in day we've had local banks come out. We've had a bank day where we've had multiple banks come on move-in day, and so they kind of still have their choice. There's properties where you set up a day where you shuttle them around, you work with local businesses, and you can take them to the bank, take them to get the phone, those types of things. So keeping those relationships up with local businesses and having those services there at move-in or the week of move-in is very helpful, and just takes some added stress off of those students coming in, because they do have a lot that they're learning. They might not have been able to come and explore the campus. They're here for the first time, so just kind of keeping that going, and then just taking that time for the extra processes and helping them do that as well. As far as the experience goes, I mean, the biggest thing is you want to make that community for them. You want to make sure that they have friends at the community and that it's home for them, because that's something that you don't want them to feel alone, and that it's nice to they are so far away from home that it helps. And there's just starting through this slide, paying rent. One thing we do here and at multiple properties that I've been a part at is we actually keep a laminated large check or money order in the office, just to kind of go through those extra tools where we can show them how to fill out the check and just offer that extra service, because a lot of times they don't know how to write a check or look at the check and it won't be signed correctly or filled out correctly, versus them going back and forth. We can easily, write out an example and they can just go right from there. As far as maintenance requests goes, that's something at move-in and throughout the process, just making sure their portal is set up and that they know that they can put maintenance requests in, and we're there to help. I think it's all about communication, that they might not necessarily know we'll come and fix something. So, and that's every student too. So just making sure that, we do those maintenance one-on-one 101s with them too. We like to do that as well, where it's simple things like how to turn off the toilet if it's overflowing, things that you might easily think that it's common sense and common knowledge, but isn't necessarily common knowledge with students. So that's something that, not putting grease down disposals and those types of things. We try to go over that. One other key one is shower curtains, making sure those are there, or even having some in the office for purchase. That can prevent damage in the bathrooms and things like that, and try not to get to the point where we have to charge them, where we can be proactive and, explain things and communicate those things that we see commonly throughout.
Yeah, I think the one thing, if I can jump in right here.
Yeah.
I know during the panel, and I wouldn't be doing Joshua any justice if I didn't mention WeChat. I know, we've said communication so much, and it's a good point and probably a good thing for us to chat about really quickly. But obviously, we have means of communication, whether that's emails, phone calls, physically going door to door and telling people. But we also use our social channels a lot here in the States. So we might post something on our Facebook group, and we might get Twitter, requests coming through, or Snapchat, things, ways that we're kind of communicating. So really, either Katie or Sabrina, whoever, if you could talk a little bit about maybe WeChat and some ways that you think operators can use that tool as a means for communication, I think it'd be really helpful.
Sure. I definitely have a lot to say about WeChat, but would you excuse me 1 minute because my laptop is dying? I just don't want it to die.
Yeah, sure. No worries. And,
I'll be right back. I'm sorry about this.
Sabrina, do you guys have on your property, do you use WeChat very much for a communication tool, whether it's for marketing and leasing or actually for kind of the resident experience portion?
So at my last property, I'll let Katie go first. Well, we've used it, and it is definitely a great tool to use. I'll let you go ahead, Katie, now that you're back.
Sure, thank you. So for WeChat, for people who doesn't know about it, it's basically like a social media app you have. It's a combination of Snapchat, of Facebook, of iMessage, of everything, of Twitter. It's basically a combination, and you can use it. It has an English version, and you can download it through the App Store, and I would say almost 99% of Chinese students uses it. So that will be a really great way to communicate with them and promote anything you want. And the other point I want to mention is that WeChat allows you to create groups. And by groups, I mean the maximum of that group is 500 people. So you can have they really have different types of groups in each universities or in each locations, and they can join to that group if students are asking for housing questions, or if you have promotions or deals going on, you can let them know. They'll be really appreciated. That's a really good way to communicate with them. And to talk about communication, I do want to mention that there are other companies can actually help you with that. I don't want to promote anything, so I won't mention any names, but like student.com or WeHousing, but you can actually contact them. I know personally I used to work with one of the properties on campus here, one north and one south, and one of those companies sent over 200 international students to us in just one leasing year. So that's a very effective way to get to know them, because sometimes it's about trust. It's not about even the communication. They want to talk to someone they know about. So when those organizations or those people have connections back in China, they can even start with the education agencies, which is where the international students start their journey. They prepare the exam with the agency, and they basically will look for everything like housing or anything else with the agency as well. So if we cooperate with them, or cooperate with any organizations that already have a very good relationship with those agencies, that would definitely have been proven to bring a very good result.
I think that's, yeah, that's really important. You know, I think on this slide we have a couple things. Oops, sorry about that, folks. We have resident events, and we have I think retention on there. Sorry, I don't know how to go back, but it's okay. We really don't need to. All I was going to say is, you know, WeChat is a really powerful tool. I understand that when you're on property, there are 100 things coming at you at all times. So there's a lot of different moving parts, and I mean, Sabrina, I'm sure you can agree with me there that every day there's, you know, something new. There's just a lot that happens. So adding something else in, that might be another process that you have to add. You know, it's sometimes a lot, but I think, you know, if there's one thing, and again, we did want to give you tangible things to take away, WeChat is a great resource. You know, Katie, I think that is spot on. It's honestly a lot more powerful than Facebook, and it is a really, really big thing for you know, domestic you know, Chinese students, and then obviously Chinese students that come over here. It's something worth researching and looking at. And when we talk about resident events, we talk about retention, we talk about communication. This is one of those tools that can really help with that, and something, you know, that I think if you're an operator and you know you have a large amount of international students, or you're really trying to break into that market, that's just one of those tangible things that you can take away and start researching and looking at. And like Katie said, you know, there are people that know how to use it really well. You know, I love using Facebook and Snapchat, but I don't use Instagram every day, so, you know, I wouldn't be an expert on that. So I would always look to people that you know that might be kind of that expert in those things, so you can kind of continue to communicate. And then moving on a little bit, and feel free, both of you, to add if you have anything else. But ultimately, we've covered a little bit of this. But, you know, let's progress on. You know, when it comes to move out, one of the questions that I would get a lot of times is like, hey, Ryan, you know, if an international student moves out and they just leave and I can't find them, you know, what do I do? And I would a lot of times preach, like, you need to communicate with them and help them understand. And one of the things that I was always doing in my previous position was talk about how we would communicate with the student, what we would educate them on with the lease. So Sabrina, if you can kind of give us some of your, you know, tips, I guess, when it comes to communication and move out and kind of those final steps when you're working with international students and they're about to leave your property.
Definitely. I think, you know, move out day starts, you know, day one. You really have to be preventative about it and be ahead of the game. And one thing we've noticed over time with international students is a lot of times when they're done with school or they're moving out, they will leave lots of possessions behind. So we would always have lots of bag and tag where you have to keep it for a lot, you know, a ton of days. And a lot of times the students just don't know that they're not supposed to leave it there. You know, it's not something they want to throw away. So, and they don't know that they're going to be charged for it. So I think, again, it goes back to that communication, making sure they know if they leave things behind, but also finding solutions. So at my property, what we do is we work with the Salvation Army. We set up boxes. We let the students know that, you know, when they're coming to move out or when that time comes, you know, bring anything out of your apartment that you don't want to throw away that's, you know, you can donate. We donated, I think, two box trucks full of donations to Salvation Army this year alone. And you know, that's something that it just goes back to that. Again, being preventative. You know, we do quarterly walks. If we notice that a student doesn't have a shower curtain, you know, we basically let them know, hey, this is going to end up in a charge. So you can either purchase one through the office or you can go get one, but, you know, we're going to come back and check that out, as well as housekeeping and things like that. Anything you can do ahead of time and repairing those damages or anything so that you set that expectation from the beginning so that you don't walk into an apartment on move-out day and have a surprise and know that now you have all these charges, the students left, how are you going to get in touch with them? Again, going back to WeChat, you know, it's a great tool to use when you're leasing, when they're a resident, and after they leave as well, too. So I think, you know, again, anything you can do preventatively so that you don't have that surprise at the end. And then take that time when they do move out, schedule those appointments ahead of time, walk through the apartment, let them know, bill back right away so that they can make those final payments before they leave. So, you know, have move-out appointments just like you would have move-in appointments. And I think that just taking that extra time is such a huge value, and it's not a waste of time.
No, that's great. Yeah, Katie, go ahead.
I just want to mention that about communication part, like Sabrina said, a lot of students just don't know they're not supposed to leave anything. They're not supposed to do any damages to the apartments. It's common sense to most students here, to us, but just so you guys know, back in China or any other Asian country, I would say, they are required to live in dorms for 4 years, for full 4 years of their university or college. So most of them have never lived in an apartment or rent an apartment before. So it's just not common sense to them, and it's very brand new to them. So a lot of times, even during moving in, just let them know there's an inspection sheet you can go through. You will be charged by each amount if there's a damage in somewhere. So they will be noticed, and so they will basically know that, because a lot of people don't know. And I personally have left a lot of things in the apartment before, and then the way I think through it is that basically I didn't take anything. I just left something here. It's more for you. So it's naturally you would think it's like I'm donating something to you. It's definitely you're not going to charge me for it. If not, you're paying for me. So it's just basically about communication, like Sabrina said.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a great point. I mean, I think, you know, everybody I'm sure on this call has been through a move out where you have that stuff, and I mean, it is hard to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to charge these people for it. But at the same time, you know, as operators, it comes down to, you know, efficiency and making sure that things are taken care of in a proper way. So, you know, I think that's great. Yeah, a lot of good stuff covered already. I just want to shout out one more time to, if you do have a question or you want to share anything, please send it through on the chat. We've got about 12 minutes left for our entire time frame here. And again, I would love if you know, you guys had any questions. We kind of left a little bit of extra time here at the end to talk about anything. Otherwise, I think there are some really great things we covered. I mean, starting from the initial, you know, experience from students, you know, leaving their home country, all of their preparation, you know, coming up to the university, and a lot of things Sabrina shared about having vendors on site that can kind of make your life easier in the long run. And not only that, but ultimately help spread word of mouth about your property, which, you know, as Katie's survey showed, is the #1 thing that students are looking for. And the number 2 and 3, which are price and location, which we know we can't change. We can't, you know, drop our prices and, you know, move our buildings, but we can have good word of mouth. We can go to those orientations. We can, you know, talk to international student groups and things like that. So there's a lot of takeaways that way. I think WeChat and communication are just super duper key things that are things that are so easy. They just take a little bit of time to research and learn. And then ultimately, you know, I think we got a lot more knowledge about, you know, move out and truly the best practices in communication when you start managing a property with international students. So that is pretty much what we have for you guys. And again, if you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to help answer them. Clark, back to you.
So I do see one question here. The question is, can Americans get on WeChat, and does it help with translation?
I actually had someone reach me out after the conference last time about this question. This Google Translate is doing kind of good. It works, but it's not the best option, and that's why I mentioned different companies you can cooperate with, because they have leasing consultants that are live, can talk to them like in Chinese or in whichever language they are native, so the communication issue can be resolved. But for WeChat, you can definitely use English, and they would definitely understand it as typing in. Is not necessarily have to translate it into another language, I would say personally, because that, you know what I mean? Like, if that sentence is correct in English, it will make more sense than the sentence is not correct in Chinese. So sometimes it's not about translation, it's just about the way you approach it and the way you talk to them. And if you want help, you can definitely get some help. There are a lot of people are doing that.
One other thing that I think is worth being mentioned here, because I mean, absolutely, you can use WeChat if you're in North America. Katie, maybe you can talk about this a little bit, but what I learned in my experience at student.com working with a number of international students, these students are very smart, and most of them, while they might not, English isn't their first language, they typically have a very advanced knowledge of the English language. So when you're talking to them, if you're talking with them in English, I'm sure reading it wouldn't be terribly hard. But Katie, I kind of wanted to get your thought on that, and if
Yeah, I
that
definitely
was
agree
true.
with that. I definitely agree with
Yeah.
that. It's just sometimes you don't have to translate, because you know during translation, if it's not a native speaker or professional translator, that will be come out maybe awkward or something else.
Probably still be better than my Mandarin, though.
I just did a webinar that was a sneak peek for our June conference. It just took place last weekend. It was about emotional intelligence, which is really trying to understand things from the other person's point of view. And I think that really applies. I mean, most of the things that I've heard you talk about in regards to helping international students is really considering it from their point of view, which is pretty much, you know, like the international students are experiencing a cultural revolution where nothing is familiar. And if you've ever been in that kind of situation, you know how disorienting it can be. If you've forgotten what that feels like, hop on a plane and go somewhere where you don't speak the language. And you start to understand very quickly how even the most basic, most basic necessities can be difficult to wrangle. So you guys have all been really great, but in particular, Katie, it's really nice to have your point of view to help us understand sort of what it's like for the student who's showing up for the first time. So I see another question here that I'd like to propose to you all. It says, the question is from Love Desai, and they ask, how do you explain the move-out process to international students when we have forms implemented for move-outs? How do you help them understand better?
So we start early, quite a few months before, just letting them know, you know, kind of when you're talking renewals through, the ones that you know are not renewing that are graduating, and just kind of going through it one-on-one with them, especially if there's forms, going door to door, you know, just kind of walking them through exactly what needs to happen, getting those appointments set up. You know, there's some great tools to use to set up appointments that you would do for move-in that you can use for move-out as well. And just kind of making that process more of a one-on-one versus a, you know, anything that can be done like a pre-walks in the weeks before. Obviously, we don't walk on move-out day. We unfortunately can't walk with every resident, so we try to, you know, do those walks ahead of time, and the quarterly maintenance is much better, but making sure they know that they can turn their keys in ahead of time. Here at the property that I'm currently at, we have a desk, kind of a courtesy patrol officer that sits there, so we always keep move-in packets there, and we actually have them printed on an envelope, a large envelope. So the form is on the envelope, and then the keys go in there, so you know you don't have the keys getting lost. And that's something that we communicate with every resident via email, via flyers, via walks, and they know anytime, even if it's at night, if they're leaving, they can still get those forms and that they're available. I've had properties that don't have those desks, and it's something you can leave, you know, out in the common area where by a drop box or something like that, or where it can be slid under a door. So I think it's definitely manageable depending on what your office entails, but
sounds like you have to be very proactive, and you also have to be super communicative and patient in your communication as somebody's coming from another culture. I think we have time for one more question. You guys up for that?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Okay. Peter Alderson asks, do you require that international students pay the entire lease up front or submit to an increased deposit?
So I can answer this from at least from my experience, and this is coming from probably the top 30, 40 student housing operators. Typically, there are definitely outliers on the other side, but typically these operators had a policy where they would allow an international student to move in with a larger deposit. Typically, this was going to cover whatever initial fees or deposits are, so an administrative fee, security deposit, if there's that, plus between 2 and 3 months rent. I actually find that's the same for the UK as it is for the US, but ultimately it's enough, and typically they're actually applying that deposit as advanced rent at the end of the lease. So the only time that wouldn't really work is if you live in a state where the jurisdiction does not allow you to take an advanced deposit, there's only a few places that don't allow that, I should say. But ultimately, the average was between 2 and 3 months rent up front that most of the operators would ask for, and again, they would apply that to the very end of the lease.
One thing to add too, I think, just paying attention to those I-20s for how long they can be and making sure they're not signing a lease longer than what they are eligible to stay. Plus, when they do the I-20, that's part of their financial information too. So those are definitely useful documents to get and pay attention to.
A great point. Susan Morris just chimed in to say that she doesn't really treat international students any differently. And in her experience, Chinese students very rarely move out owing any kind of balance.
That's in my experience as well.
Your comment, Susan. Okay, well, we're running out of time. I'm going to do a quick little wrap up here, guys. Thanks to this fantastic and enlightening panelists for the wealth of information they shared with us today. This Encore learning opportunity represents just one offering in a lineup of 16 breakout sessions focused on student housing that took place at the conference. Very important, this webinar has been recorded, and we're going to post it to the event website. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording that you can access all the information. You can also share it with people in your organization who might benefit from it and weren't able to dial in today. If you have follow-up questions, you can see the presenters' email addresses here on the screen. They're also retrievable through the recording if you don't have a pen or pencil handy. So please feel free to continue the conversation offline in an email. Sabrina, Ryan, and Katie are all super helpful and easy to engage. And I just want to say I hope you all had a useful experience today and that you found the information valuable. I really enjoy the chance to sit down with industry experts and sort of chat things out via our webinar series. And before you go, I thought it might be really useful to mention that the 2017 NAA Education Conference and Exposition is going to be in Atlanta, June 21st through the 24th. We expect more than 10,000 people this year. I always think of the Education Conference as the meeting of our tribe. There's something for everybody. It's a huge event, tons of energy, really exciting, and probably some of the best education that's available in the industry. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. And thanks to everybody for dialing in today. Huge thanks to Sabrina, Ryan, and Katie. Also Josh, who should be flying over the Atlantic to London at this point. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time and your energy. I really appreciate it. Huge thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.